Okay, great. So very happy to have you with us tonight and to have this other session of the marketing group. When I was discussing with some of you just before, I was just thinking that we are so lucky to still have those kind of events compared to many other regions in the world where people cannot regroup. They have to wear a mask. It's very complicated. They have to have this social distancing. So yeah, so it's great that we can still have these kind of events, and maybe it's a new normal to have like people here together and also people online. So welcome for all the person also who join us online. One of the benefits also to have people online is that we can welcome people who are not in Shanghai actually. And I know that at least we have some people from Hong Kong joining, so we kind of extend our group. So it's one of the nice things also that happened from this setting. So thank you for the French Chamber of Commerce to host this event and for the perfect organization as usual. So I'm really happy to work together. And so today, so we are going to discuss about a topic that you may have heard about. Which is called private traffic. I don't know if it's a name that rings a bell to you. Who heard about private traffic before? If you just raise your hand just to have an idea. Yeah, some people cannot play, but yeah. So, okay, maybe 1/3 of you. So maybe some of you came out of curiosity, some other because they had a bit of knowledge about private traffic, but they would like to know more. And I'm very happy that to have probably some of the best people in Shanghai and probably in China and beyond China to tell you everything you want to know about private traffic, so you can come back later and bring that topic to your business or discuss with your friend and appear as a specialist of the topic. So I would like to welcome our two speakers for this. You don't have only one speaker, but two speakers for this event. Maybe ladies first. So I will introduce Rachel. You can stand up and say hello. So Rachel is a general manager and partner at Faber Novel in China. And I have the pleasure to work every day with Rachel. Welcome. And Ray, you can also stand up. Ray is a co-founder with Vela, which is just sitting next to him, of a company called PG Dajan, which is one of the most successful startups around beauty, KOC in China, and not only. And they have been supported, one of the company, I won't disclose the name, who was pioneer into private traffic. So they have a great knowledge around this topic. So thank you very much for coming and to share your thoughts. So we'll have 45 minutes of presentation. If you have any question, you can raise questions. So please raise your hand when you have a question. And if you can just state your name and your company, or that could be good to have a bit of context. And then we'll have a Q&A for 15 minutes. If we don't go through all the questions before the 45, we still have these 15 minutes. And then, so after we'll be unlocked, now we are locked down. We have a buffet for us with drinks and snacks, I guess, right? And same for the person who are online. If you have any question, what is the best way actually to we'll integrate, we'll read the question. So you ask your question on the chat, and then we'll read the question and reformulate the question to the speakers. Great, thank you very much, and have a good evening. Yeah.
Thank you. Please tell me if you can hear me. So I'm very glad to be in person with you today to talk about one of the topics that we see could be one of the most disruptive trends for the e-commerce sector in China. So just briefly, a little introduction of context about who we are. Faber Novel is a global innovation agency that has been existing for 17 years, and we help traditional businesses to accelerate their business through innovation. And we We have several capabilities to help them there. Strategy consulting with digital activations, for example, and digital gap analysis and market entry strategy. We have marketing to connect them with Chinese consumers, particularly in China with the global Chinese consumers. And we also help them to build assets with technology to make them digitally fit. And we had a very short introduction about PG Darzhen. PG Darzhen is the China's first key opinion consumer community. They're an online platform that's aggregating 2.5 million consumers that can be leveraged by brands in many different ways, including product seeding, content seeding, and non-physical research, among others. So some of the brands that we support collectively, you'll see a lot of cosmetics, fashion, and fast-moving consumer goods. And some of the brands that we will introduce a little bit later, some of the cases that will be introduced around Perfect Diary and Stage Q in particular. So I, on purpose, chose a little bit of a controversial title with the state of China's e-commerce, or how brands are feeding marketplaces and not how marketplaces are helping brands, on purpose. Starting with a little bit of context around China's e-commerce. As you know, it's a very, very big growing market. It's actually expected to reach nearly half of the overall retail sales by the end of the year. It's not just a massively growing market. It's the biggest e-commerce market in the world, but it's also the most mature market. And with this maturity, one of the results of that is that it's becoming highly competitive. So you can see there's about 200,000 brands on Tmall. And what's interesting to notice is that it's not just international brands, it's really local brands that are going up the brand ladder and becoming increasingly premium and increasingly luxury, coming to fight, the usual international brands kind of playground. And if we look at Tmall Global, it's 22,000 brands and even more now that are competing on that platform. That means that it's becoming increasingly difficult for brands to stand out and to generate revenue on those marketplaces. One is the fact that the unique proposition is really tough to reach for brands. The marketplaces are built in such a way that algorithms are prioritizing bestsellers and brands that are spending a lot on ads. It's a very standardized user experience, so it's very difficult for brands to stand out because they can't have, their own design or things like that. And it's a product-based search, which means that all in all, most of the purchase decision is made either on price and on convenience, which makes it very difficult to stand out. It's becoming difficult to generate profit. You're constantly paying to retarget your own consumers. You have no access to consumer data because Tmall consumers are Tmall consumers, even though they are purchasing your own products. You're constantly spending on ads to drive traffic and clicks, and you're getting increasing pressure from the platforms to participate and have discounts on festivals. And for anyone that has a brand over here, you'll know that there is a shopping festival every 10 days now, maybe, on e-commerce platforms, depending on the platforms, the category, Super Brand Day, whatever it is. And more than that, on top of that, the marketplaces themselves are starting to compete head-to-head with the brands, but building their own brands, like the Tmall Innovation Center is building their own products and their own brands, and by starting their direct retail business. Luckily, there's a contender that's coming in the playground, which is social commerce. And what we call social commerce is the ability to close the transaction within a social media ecosystem. It's very different from traditional e-commerce because it relates particularly well with Chinese consumers' preferences, as it is as Chinese consumers' top 3 when they are making a purchase is based on recommendation. So being within the social environment is naturally answering this relatable to Chinese consumers. And we see it in the numbers. Social e-commerce conversion rates land between 6 to 10%, which is 6 to 20 times more what the type of conversion rates that you can have on e-commerce. It's really gaining a massive momentum. If we look at the growth rate of traditional e-commerce, for example, for a couple of years back, 36% of traditional e-commerce versus 100% for social commerce, it's really eating up market shares as we're expecting social commerce to account for about 20% of online retail sales by the end of this year. What we're seeing is that a lot of the social commerce is happening on WeChat. So as you know, WeChat has about 1 billion active users, and half of the overall mobile screen time is spent on the WeChat ecosystem. And helping to close the loop of the transaction is happening mainly through mini programs. There are 4 million mini programs currently active on WeChat, which is about twice the amount of apps on the App Store. And 500 million daily active users are actively using mini programs. And if you look at the brand side, now 95% of brands that are active on e-commerce are moving towards mini programs. So this is bringing us to the topic that we're talking about today. We really are excited to explore with you and welcome, PG Dairen, that's one of the pioneers in private traffic, in running private traffic for brands. Private traffic is really a way to do decentralized and conversational e-commerce together directly with your consumers. So Ray is going to explain to us what is private traffic and extract from their observation and from their experiences what are some of the best practices when you run private traffic.
Well, good night. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Patrice, for such a nice introduction, and thank you to the French Chamber of Commerce for having us tonight. So, as Rachel very well presented, the market is becoming more and more competitive. There is more competition. But the funny thing is that the competition is not coming only from our traditional competitors, other brands. It's also coming from the people that are, or they say the platforms or the players that are our partners, okay? So it's becoming more complex. So brands has been looking forward to engage into an alternative. And then what has become the alternative is private domain traffic. So what is that exactly? Private domain traffic refers to a channel that as a brand, we can use to interact with our consumers anytime we deem it necessary, okay? It's a tool that we can use whenever we want. It's not a WeChat official account. It's not a Weibo account. It's not a Xiaohongshu account, okay? Because through those channels, we cannot communicate with our consumers on a one-to-one manner. We are not able to build intimacy with them. On the other hand, private traffic allows us to do that. The interesting thing is that the best ecosystem for building and running private traffic in China is the Tencent ecosystem, basically comprised by WeChat Work, WeChat, and the mini programs. So a very good way to represent how private traffic differed from what we call public traffic is through the slides that we have at this moment in the screen. Generally, in the public traffic, we go there and then we screen, we connect, we convert consumers. End of the story. That's, well, the journey finished. However, with private traffic, the journey turns into a loop where conversion is not the end of the end of the path. It is just I will say the middle point where the magic starts to happen. Because with private traffic, we are able to convert and continue the communication with our consumers. We are able to continue engaging them in a very cost-effective way and in a very intimate way, which allows us to turn them into repurchase consumers, but not only into repurchasers, but also into brand advocates, which turn into bringing more people into our loop. That's the main difference between public traffic pool and private domain traffic. which in the public, it ends at some point. In the private traffic, you are able to extend that relationship. You are able to own that relationship. You are able to extract more information in order to level up your value proposition to your consumers. So in order to put it very, very clear, what are some of the business objectives that private traffic allow us to achieve? This map represents clearly some of the main business objectives that we can achieve when we deploy a private traffic business strategy, not a marketing strategy, because that's a point that is important to highlight. Many believe that private traffic is a simple element in your marketing mix. It is not. Private traffic has become the core of the business of those companies that have been really successful at implementing it. But yeah, well, some of the business objectives that private traffic allow us to achieve, the first one is increase client retention. Okay, this is what we fight for. It's so hard. We have to invest so much money to get a client, and it's so sad when that client just stops being with us. Okay, so private traffic allows us to increase client retention. And then when we do that, of course, we are going to be increasing the consumer's lifetime value. Well, and then if we increase consumers' lifetime value, chances are higher that we are going to have repeat purchases. It is clear, no? But well, as I mentioned before, private traffic not only helps us to develop our brand and then drive sales, it also helps us to cultivate an army of brand advocates or an army of own KOCs that we can activate to drive more value into our brand building side, into our brand building angle, okay? And then from here, we can also optimize paid media spending, which is something that I will show later on. And we can also validate our marketing tactics. That's very important. And then we are going to show one case of a brand that not only validated their marketing tactics, they validated a new product. And within 6 months, they were able to launch a new brand from concept to present offline even. And then some other elements that private traffic allow us to achieve is specifically streamlining the product development process and allow us to provide personalized service, which is a really, I will say, is a very critical element when engaging Chinese consumers, which are looking forward to be treated in a more personalized, more human, more intimate way. And that's what we can achieve with private traffic. So in here, we have a very simple explanation on how private traffic allows us to optimize our pay media spending. On the right, we have a traditional WeChat advertisement. Okay, this is what we see. We have a couple of images, we have access to one mini program, and then in here, we pay per view, per exposure. If anyone that have been doing WeChat advertisement, then we know that we don't get a very critical metric. We don't get reach, we get exposure. And when we get exposure, it means that the same person may have been exposed to our advertisement. Okay? And then it requires a dedicated budget. If you don't pay, you don't engage your audience. On the other hand, this is what happens when we develop private traffic. We are able to retarget those consumers that enters our community, and that costs us nothing. Maybe the time that one of our staff will take to assemble the images, and then it has the access to the mini program, same as the advertisement. By simply scanning that picture, that our consumer can be taken to the product where we want them to land. And this allows us to drive loyalty because we are engaging them not only when we spend money, but we are able to do it on a daily basis if we want. And we can hyper-target them. We can run different type of WeChat moments on different consumer targets. Questions?
And if some brand is unknown, then you don't know it's real or not, or if it's really good or not. So I'm not quite sure about this private traffic thing. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I think yeah.
And I really love that you raised the point, because as you can see here, this is not a normal account. This is a WeChat work account, which is an account that has it represent the organization that is behind. So it means this post is not being posted by a normal user. It's a post that is posted by the brand, same as advertisement, okay? And then that consumer is inside the community. This is the key point here. Retarget engaged consumers. Those are consumers that already know about you, consumers who may have purchased your product in the past. The key point here is that I don't need to pay to re-engage them. That's what private traffic allows us to see, to achieve. I totally agree with you. If I'm in my moments and I see people that start to posting whatever product, I will block them. But if it comes from a brand that I already use, a brand that I decided to be part of the community, of course that I will, the probability that I will engage with this kind of content is much, much higher. Any other question?
So why in my WeChat I don't have people like that?
Why you don't have this kind of people in your WeChat? Maybe because the brands that you engage with are not that forward thinking and they haven't created their own private traffic. So let's talk to them and let's get them to embrace the right trend. Okay, so let's keep going. Here is another interesting sample on how private traffic allows us to decrease or reduce the dependency on crowded marketplaces. This is a screenshot of Taobao Shibo. In here, we need to fight for attention, okay? Because we go in here and then you will see a bunch of live streaming happening at the same time. If I come here, then in here, I pay to get noticed because those are paid live stream. So you get like an exclusivity. In here is what one Chinese brand called Judy Doll is doing. I do follow their private traffic. And then while I'm browsing in my moments, so I get to see that there is one live streaming happenings live. And then I just scan the QR code and I jump into their live stream. As a consumer, I don't go there and start browsing. So the point here is that the brand is engaging me in a let's say in a space where I am closer to them, in a space where there is no any other brand, or if there are some other brands, the amount will be quite less than on the traditional marketplaces. This, as a consumer, I already engaged with the brand, and this is the key of private traffic. If I already gained that consumer, I should be able to continue interacting with that consumers without the noise or without having to spend more money on that. This is what private traffic allows us to do. So how do consumers feel about private traffic? Because it's very important. From the brand perspective, yes, it's really good, but then how the consumers feels about that? Then the interesting thing is that around 17% of Chinese, 62% of Chinese consumers, they feel attracted or they have the willingness to participate in a private community. And it's something that is quite embedded in the culture that we have in here in China, that interest of being part of a group. And that's what private traffic provides to consumers. Where do they feel more comfortable to be part of a community? With the WeChat ecosystem. Why? Because they don't wanna download a new application, or they don't wanna jump to another space in order to interact with the brand they like. So what is a typical user journey when it comes to getting consumers into private traffic? Everything we start maybe with following your WeChat official account. Then from there, they will receive an invitation to participate in the private traffic. Once they add the account, they are already part of your community because you are going to be able to target them. You are going to be able to engage with them in a one-to-one manner. Then Of course, we are going to buy them in one group because they are in there. They are going to mingle with like-minded consumers. They are going to participate in events and so on. Then from that, we are going to engage them. How do we engage them? Can be sales-driven activities, activities that encourage them to show off their latest purchase with or their latest interaction with your brand. And basically, we will engage them to talk about you in other channels, in other social medias. And that is what turned into advocacy. And then from there, we create a closed loop. Because once you have people talking about you, endorsing your brand organically on different channels, chances are that more people will come and join your virtuous cycle. Okay, so how do we populate our private traffic? Imagine that we build our infrastructure, we have our all the elements that I will discuss later. How do we get people into our community, into our private traffic community? Generally, there are 4 main channels, even though there are more, let's say, more innovative way to get people into your community. Everything will start if you have offline presence with your retail store. Your sales associate, they are going to be the first contact point for your potential private traffic members. So we are going to invite them to join the community. You come to my shop. If you don't buy anything, still, let's have the conversation going. Okay? E-commerce platform. In e-commerce platform, generally when people buy something from us, then we will send them one small brochure, one small pamphlet, inviting them to come into our community. Because the idea is to maintain the communication with you, that can to see what I'm offering, okay? Then offline events, when the conditions allows. Sometimes we cooperate with several beauty brands, and then we spend a lot of money creating very beautiful pop-up stores. But then after 11, after 10 p.m., the conversation ends. It doesn't have to be like that. We encourage consumers to come into our private community so then we can keep talking, we can keep sharing, we can keep engaging, we can keep nurturing the relationship with our consumers. And here, KOC-driven activation. Most of the brands, when they get the idea of private traffic, they start thinking, how am I going to bring people? How am I going to create enough content in order to keep my community going? KOCs are the answer. Through them, we are able to engage like-minded consumers, but also to create content that we can repurpose in our community. So there will be always a fresh stream of information going into your community so you can ensure engagement. Then, from the community, the consumers, with one click, they convert, creating a loyalty loop or a loyalty program. This is the beauty of private traffic and the amazing ecosystem that WeChat has, Tencent, sorry, is bringing to us. We need to leverage it. So what are some of the key elements in order to build, grow, and manage private traffic pools? Before we go there, I'd like to ask again, is there any question? Okay, then let's keep going. I'm looking forward to the questions. So some of the key elements to create, grow, and manage a private traffic pool. The first thing is your WeChat public account. Through that, you are going to be able to deliver high-quality content to your consumers and integrate. It's like your front door. That's it. It's the first thing they see of you. The second element is your corporate account, which will allow you to first control your community, which is something that generally we don't do when we have like not traditional WeChat groups. When I talk about controlling your community, I'm talking about that you will be able to segment your consumers or community members. You are going to be able to set up anti-harassment rules. You will be able to, let's say, ban some very sensitive words or topic that you may not want to be discussed in your community. You may be able also to ban competitors' mini programs to be shared in your in your community. That's what WeChat Work allow you to do. And more importantly, you will be able to collect information about how your consumers engage with you. So you are going to be able to level up your value proposition for them. Then the next one are the group chats. Again, many people think that the group chats are the private traffic. It is not, because once they once they come into our corporate account, they are already part of our community, and we are able to engage with them in a one-to-one manner. We are able to engage with them through the moments. But in the group is where the fun happens, because in here we run the events, we are constantly sharing information and so on. And then the Holy Grail. Okay, here is where the magic happens, because we invest a lot of time and effort to build our ecosystem in order to drive our community to visit constantly our mini program, so they can give us back a little bit of all the effort that we put on them by purchasing the services and products that we offer them. So, okay, so imagine that we already have our basic infrastructure. Now, what do I need in order to ensure that my community is healthy? Here is what we call a members distribution system. I know that many of you may have been in touch with, for example, Perfect Diary, private traffic entryway. But most of the time, we miss that every QR code has an identification here, meaning that it doesn't matter how often you visit that entryway, you will always be in touch with the same account operator. That allows us to minimize or completely eliminate the risk of having duplicated members in our community, which in turn allows us to have a real idea of the size of our community. And that will allow us also to properly measure the result or the impact that we may generate with recruitment activities. It seems to be nothing, but it's very important, okay? And then another important element is that through the system, we are able to identify our consumers. They are going to be tagged or identified across the entire ecosystem. And it doesn't matter whether they come from an online recruitment, whether it's an SMS recruitment, whether it's offline recruitment, whether it's an advertisement recruitment, they always will be in touch with the same operator. That's very important. And that's one of the core elements of building a private traffic community that is healthy, how we choose to call it. So accessing your private traffic should be as easy as possible. We want them to come and hang out with us. If you welcome me in your home, please open the door. Don't put a lot of hurdles in there. I want to go inside there, so welcome me. That's what make the difference in private traffic. We have one case where we are going to show how important it is. Making it simple for consumers to have a very streamlined, a very simple experience when trying to access to your community is really important. Your WeChat official account, your QR code for offline events, your online activation when working with KOCs or KOLs or advertisement is also really important. So here also very important, the segmentation. When we build private traffic, as I mentioned before, private traffic should be seen as a business strategy, meaning that when we create it, we should have the idea that the members that are going to join our community today, they are going to be with us maybe 10 years later or 5 years later. So that's why it is very important to segment them correctly. And then by saying that, I want to point out here, segmenting them based on their birth year rather than based on their birth date. Why? Because today I may be just 30 something, but within 10 years I will be 40, and my aspirations, my necessities, the things that may resonate with me are going to be different. So it is important to be able to move them across our community so that then we can properly target them. We can properly deliver messages that are going to resonate with them. It doesn't matter whether they are 25 today or whether they are going to be 35 within 10 years. Here is also something interesting. How do we manage thousands of people in a very efficient way? It's so simple. No, and it's not simple. Actually, it's really hard. But it is possible to do it. You won't believe that with 3 operators, you are able to manage a community of more than 30,000 members. How do you do that? Simple. One account operator or one account manager, which will create a story, will research the, let's say, the topics that are resonating better with your community, the hashtag, the colors, the song that may be really hitting hard your community. And that team will create the content and the story that, and then the account operators, as we call it, they are going to replicate that information across your entire community. It can be through groups, as is represented in here, but also it can be through direct messages. And then you may be thinking, okay, I have 30,000 members. Am I going to talk to them one by one? Not necessarily. You can send one message to all of them, or you can have 4 messages, and then you can send maybe the first message to group A, and that group maybe have only 8,000 people. And then in another group, you may have 7,000, and then you may deliver a different message to them. And then that brings to my mind the possibility of running A/B testing without having to pay to any third party. That's what we get to do with private traffic. And then when we have an efficient infrastructure for running it. Then here also very important, team structure. Many brands, they think that relying on their sales associate only is the way to go for private traffic. It is not private traffic, it is clienteling, which is different from private traffic. When you are running a private traffic ecosystem, is when you have a team that is in charge of constantly researching what's going on with your community, constantly trying to understand what will resonate with them better. And they will create the content, they will create the stories that this team will activate within your community. We do recommend a team of 1 community manager, account assistant, and some reactors. In here, let me do a parenthesis, because you see reactors, you may be thinking about nuclear reactors, but they are not nuclear reactors, okay? These are people that are going to react to the messages, to the content that we are going to share in our community. And they are going to react in the way that we expect the rest of our community to react, so we can lead them to follow the path, to follow the journey that the account management team have created for them. These people generally are KOCs. You don't need to pay them, okay? So we have this team, and we recommend that a team like this one will operate a community of up to 20,000 members if we want to do it efficiently. So this is really important. One more important element to mention when it comes to the team structure is that the people that are going to be operating this team, they have to be able to relate with our consumers. I cannot have a lady that may be 35, 40 years old, maybe she has 2 kids, is dealing with some, let's say, older females issues. I cannot have that female interacting with, let's say, females that are 18 to 22 years old, for example, that are now entering or maybe finishing college and so on. It is important to have in the team people that can understand the people to whom they are talking to, okay? To understand how to craft the messages, the slangs, the timing to talk with them. It is very, very significant. It can make a really a big difference when you engage the right people in your team when it comes to driving result from private traffic. Another important element is the structure. Here, through our practice, we have identified 4 main content structure that allow us to yield the better results in terms of sales. The important element in here is that the entryway for purchasing should be always present in the messages that we deliver to our member. It doesn't mean that it should be extremely pushy or sell-oriented content. Not necessarily have to be like that. It is important to provide them with inspirational information, with information, detailed information about the product. We have seen a trend that consumers are more and more concerned about the elements of the skincare or the new lipstick that they are using. They want to know if the brand is using honey or aloe or any other elements. And then providing them with that information allow us to drive them to the conversion entryway. The content, as I mentioned before, the content have to be relevant, have to be relatable, which means that the content should be simple. Many brands think that they need to create very well stylized content in order to be shared in the group. No, what we want them to feel is that they are talking with one person that is just like them. Of course, if we are talking about a luxury brand, then we have to level up the quality of our content. But in here is mostly, I will say, for a masstige brand. So we need to be able to communicate to communicate with the masses and deliver to them content that they can replicate in their homes. So then that we can build that connection. I usually get to say that when consumers are resting is when we get to work. Okay, so we can see here, as expected, the night time is the prime time in private traffic. If we want to engage them, we have to be able to communicate with them when they are on their way home or when they are already in bed, because that's when the magic happens. Sometimes in the morning, it happens a little bit. In the afternoon, as you can see, the reaction is really low. But when it comes to night, here is where it happens. That's why we generally recommend to brands, you should not look at your sales associate as your private traffic operators, because those people are working offline, maybe from 9 to 10. I don't think they will have energy to interact with anyone online when they are going to their home. Okay, and here is where the magic really happens, believe me. Okay, so very important also, performance analytics. We need to know what's going on, the messages that we are sending to our consumers, how are they resonating, so we can keep our account management team accountable. How many new members are we able to drive into our community? How many messages are transacted within our community? It's not only about conversion, it's about how much we get people to talk and interact with us. The more they interact with us, there is a high correlation between conversion and engagement. We all know that. Okay, so tracking how the actions that we are doing within our community are resonating or how they are performing is really critical. And that's something that we are able to do when we have a private traffic, well structured and well managed. Let's go into the cases. But before we get into the cases, I like to get a sip of water. Someone could help me with that. So in the meantime, do you have any question? Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing with the chaos is not the main, is not the focus of the presentation, and but still the main differentiation between KOCs and KOLs is that they are, let's say, most of the time standard consumers who have the interest to engage with one brand like the one you may be representing, and then we can see it and experience on them, and then encourage them to bring their friends and their like-minded peers into our community, but at the same time to build trust for us in social media. How? By reviewing the experience that we deliver to them. Okay, so that's how the KOCs come to play a role in private traffic. And as I mentioned, they allow us to have a flow of fresh content coming in a daily basis into our private traffic. The more content you get people generating for you on social media, the more resources you will have to power your community. That's how the KOCs come to play a role in here. Of course, yes. Videos in Douyin, posting beautiful pictures in Weibo, Xiaohongshu, Bilibili, whatever you decide. Okay, so another, the next question was if there is an equivalent of private traffic in the West. Well, what can I tell you? We have communities in the West for years. I think for very long ago. I just remember the cares of Harley Davidson, how they turned it from almost bankrupt in 1978 into the company they still are today, was by building a community. So yes, we have a sort of private traffic equivalent in the US, but not as developed as what we have in here. That will be the right answer. And then again, having the ability to communicate with them in an intimate way and in an environment where consumers are comfortable and are constantly in is something that only China has at this moment. I wouldn't be impressed or surprised to see WhatsApp doing something similar in the near future. And is where I think private traffic may be replicated. So we need to watch out because we need to go to the West and help them develop their private traffic. Thank you for the heads up. Okay. Right.
And you mentioned that one of the benefits of the WeChat program was the fact that brand will manage the process. And I'm sure WeChat makes sure that there are different brands, products, limitations that I find it hard to believe that there are
Well, at this moment, the mini programs are totally free to operate. And then the key where Tencent is making money is in the transaction, because all the transactions that happen within the Tencent ecosystem happens within the WeChat Pay. And then once you get consumers to use your WeChat Pay, you are hurting where it hurts Alipay. So those consumers are going to use WeChat Pay more even when when they go and buy offline. This is the strategy behind private traffic, and that's why WeChat work and the mini programs are totally free. Because what Tencent, from my perspective, of course, what Tencent may want is to defeat Alipay. And what will be better than creating that, the word is not coming to my mind now, but that creating that costume of using WeChat Pay. And then Tencent didn't have that before. Now they have it with private traffic, which is a sort of decentralized commerce. It still is one ecosystem, but there is no, you don't need to pay in order to reach the people that are already engaged with you. That's how Tencent is kind of turning around the model that we have been interacting with for years in this market. You mentioned something about the information, the gender, the birth year, and so on. Very simple. When they joined, when consumers join the community, you give them a personalized message, automatic message, of course, and you ask them 3 questions. When they answer those questions, they provide you the data. Automatically, they will get tagged by simply doing that. For consumers, it feels like, okay, I came to talk with my friend, because as we will show later, most of the private traffic are represented by standard consumers. So that friend, we ask you a few questions. Hey, Bao, where is your region? What is your birth year? And that information will be automatically inputted into the system. But you can get the user information when they just join the community, but that information is not reliable. Because consumers generally, they don't put where they are for real. They say they are in Valencia, but they are in Shanghai. Okay, so let's get to talk about Shandong. I know that you may know the brand is one of the most important brands of the Halal group. And then something very nice that Shandong have been doing is that they have been attracting consumers into their private traffic by leveraging live shows and advertisement. They were the first brand to start inviting consumers to join their private traffic through live streaming. Something important is that they offer free products, they offer discount, and so on within the groups. They have built a very nice ecosystem for their private traffic. However, the problem with them is that when you are trying to get into their private traffic, it's like you have a sign that say come in, and then you have 10 people in front telling you will not come in. Okay, it's like a obstacle race. First, if you wanna get into their private traffic, you need to register. They ask you for your name, a bunch of stuff. It's like registering in one CRM system. But then after that, they will ask you to answer a survey, 11 to 19 questions. So you can see all the restrictions. So many consumers will say, what is going on with these people? But then the funny thing is that once you go through that very painful process, you land in this page. Every time you hit that button, you can get to communicate with one of their operators, which allow you to get in touch with, allow you to be more than one time within their ecosystem. But then in the groups, when you get into the groups, the engagement is really low because the content is like just pushing the products, and there is not so much like meaningful information for the consumers. At least is what we have experienced while evaluating their private traffic. This will be turned around very easily. Get the consumers into your private traffic, get them to register once they are already with you, and 1 week later, ask them to fill up a survey for you. Why I need to put all these obstacles at the very beginning? This is something that we should never do if we are planning or we are running a private domain community. So let's get into the nice things. So let's talk about now Stage Q. I really like to present this case because it's a foreign brand. It's a small brand that rely on Sephora for their sales. So you can imagine that there is not so much information for them in order to level up their business proposition, because information is owned by one traditional marketplace. So the brands was facing that situation, and they came to us and asked us, what can we do about that? We say, okay, let's build up a private community, and let's use vision marketing in order to go out there into the public traffic pool and bring your ideal consumers, your potential consumers, or maybe people who already are buying your product. In April this year, we launched the community, and since then, there have been, at this moment, there are more than 30,000 members in that community in 4 months, I would say. And then, in average, in a typical day, there are almost 19,000 messages transacted in between the operators and between the community members, which allow us to talk about the engagement level that we are able to drive for the brand. And here is the important thing. On the Sephora mini program only, they have been able to experience a 28% sales lift, mainly driven by the private domain community, because there is no any other marketing activity done to drive sales in the mini program. So this tells us about what we can achieve when we deploy a private traffic. It doesn't matter whether it is a well-known brand or is a very new brand in the market. So what do we do with them? The official account management, the private domain setup and management, content creation, the event production, as well as seasonal KOCs activation. Another client that we have been working with is Perfect Diary. With them, we have been doing mainly KOCs activation in order to help them to grow their private traffic. Something interesting about Perfect Diary is that they started in the public pool area. Okay, they started nurturing and building awareness and building trust in the public. Then in 2017, the WeChat store came along and the WeChat groups started to happen. Today, Perfect Diary is planning to open over 600 offline stores across China. And that's something that have been done within, what, 2 years, I would say. And that has been driven mainly by this decision, the decision of collecting their consumers and turning that community into an engine of growth, not only for sales, but also for developing other brands. We may have heard of AB Choices, which is a new brand launched by Perfect Diary. It is interesting that in November, around November, October 2019, the brand was still a concept. And then in February, the first store was already in place. How they did that? Basically by validating their idea, validating every single SKU through the private domain community. So it allows us to have an idea or a sense on how private traffic can allow us to streamline our product development process. But then they also purchased another brand called Literal Dean. Before purchasing the brand, they also validated their investment through the private traffic by exposing their audience to the SKU, exposing their audience to the brand. Then once they got enough reassurance that the brand will resonate within their community, within their audience, they decided to purchase it. De-risking our business decision. That's what private traffic has allowed us to achieve. Well known the process, how private traffic, how Perfect Diary generally acquires consumers. These kind of insert are delivered into the packages when you purchase something in Tmall, Jingdong, or any other marketplace. But also those inserts are delivered to the KOCs when we do activation for them, so they can join the community and they can bring their friends into the community. And then since they are KOCs, so they come with the mindset, okay, in here, I need to have certain relevance. And I will be very active and I will engage quite a lot in the groups. And having one person active in your group can generate a really nice effect, activating and engaging other people within your community. So by leveraging private traffic, Perfect Diary today has accumulated up to more than 5 million users. That's an estimate as of December 2019. And only 150 employees were able to generate within 300 to 500 millions in sales just in 2019. That's the magic. So with that, I will finish my presentation. I will get back to Rachel. Thank you.
We're the only thing standing between you and wine. I know it's intense, but we'll be sticking around. So you can have both us and wine.
Thank you for this very interesting presentation. It's like the hot topic right now, and it was really nice to get to know more about it. What I understood is that private traffic is like this very powerful tool to kind of like optimize the current customer base so that they engage with the brand and repurchase. But is it also a tool to expand the customer base?
Yes, totally right. Because like I said through the presentation, once you are able to engage your current consumer space, you can drive them to become your brand evangelist. The more people you have out there endorsing your brand, recommending your brand, creating content organically, reaching people like them, the higher is the probability that you will have more people joining your community. And that's what you get to do with private traffic.
Thanks.
Wine? Food? Oh, no, not yet.
Just one quick question, but like private traffic is very important for every business. But we talked a lot of beauty products, physical product that people can purchase from the platform. What about non-physical products? What about services, which we also want to do this private trafficking, but we don't have maybe, it's just not as simple as click and purchase. It's like the engagement behind might need to be much more personalized to really understand what the people need and sell something. I work in an insurance business. not the sexiest product to purchase, but an important one, and which required a lot of engagement. And that's kind of a trend that we are also trying to follow on private trafficking. How would you suggest to do, or what would be the key on this kind of product? Not necessarily insurance, of course, but any kind of service, any kind of non-physical product. How would you do that?
Can I try? Okay. So you're sitting next to the very right person who's now doing a study about private traffic and private traffic practices across a very wide number of industries. And we're actually looking at finance industry at this moment because so what we see are maybe two things. One side is because your business is working with high net worth individuals that are usually used to tailor-made services and actually enjoy this kind of one-on-one relationship, you can use private traffic not with the groups, but more on a clienteling side with one-on-one conversation at scale. Using WeChat Work, you'll be able to have your colleagues to be clear with what type of information they can share, they should share in order to better serve those customers within the WeChat ecosystem. So that's one side. The one-on-one conversations can happen and can be part of private traffic. And the other one is when you are looking at groups and how you can manage groups in order to bring value, even though you may not be driving conversion from the groups directly. What we're seeing is that there is a lot of high engagement groups that are based on information sharing and experience sharing, where and we're looking at one of the groups that was around stocks and the stock exchange and looking at the overall stocks health, etc., where you have the ability to have as the facilitator of the group could be, for example, an expert that is sharing information, analysis, and creating conversations within the group around those topics. So you're moving away the purpose of the group not being conversion directly, but being information sharing and engagement. Well, yeah.
Sort of service, because you can share, like, serve your clients with the information because they're helping you to manage your wealth. So you share information to help them to kind of pick and choose what investment, which direction to go and stuff like that. And also they can answer all the questions they may have, like in the group chat, and other people will benefit from the questions as well because it's all about like kind of useful tips or useful information.
So like nurturing, more on the nurturing side, yeah. Then I guess, is it time for having a little drink?
Just, is there any question online? Just resend them the message, but seems like no. Okay, well, then
great.
Get to the drinks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.